Yeah, Fusion Marketing Bible. It originally I started with the Social Media Bible. I have written 9 books now. The Social Media Bible actually hit #1 on Amazon. It's in its third edition in 5 languages. And what happened is that every time I would do a radio interview or a TV interview or an interview for a magazine, they would always ask me what comes next, what happens after social media, which I always thought was kind of a bizarre question because social media changed the world. It changed the way we communicated. It changes the way we do business. And to come out and ask what comes after social media. But being a futurist and somebody who was always kind of looking to future trends, I realized that there is something that's going to come after social media, and I wanted to kind of figure out and identify what it was. And as you said earlier, I mean, just to give you just some quick background, I'm a business person before I'm an author and before I'm an innovator. I mean, I've built 14 companies. I have 18 inventions in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., along with 30,000 of my personal records are part of the permanent collection of the Smithsonian. I have another 14 inventions in the Computer History Museum. I own 3 patents on three-dimensional internet advertising. So I've always kind of been on the cutting edge of innovation and mostly marketing. And that's actually how fusion marketing came about. And what you're about to see in this presentation, very few people have seen because the book has only just recently been released. And it's where we're going to be 5 years from now. If you want to know how to use social media in a way that no one has ever looked at it before, and how to use all the media, traditional media, digital media, and social media, and where everyone's brain is going to be at 5 years from today, that's what this presentation is. And it scares a lot of people, but people who want to be on that cutting edge, that's what's driving the Fusion Marketing Bible. Fusion Marketing Bible actually hit #3 on Amazon already, and I'm really proud to say that. The concept that I'm about to show you, Fusion Marketing, is so unique and so powerful that, believe it or not, it's actually was accepted by the United States Patent Office and is currently patent pending. Probably that I'll never enforce the patent, but that's how powerful this brand new form of marketing is. So what I'd like to do is kind of start with some basic premises, basic truths that we've probably all heard before, but I want to build this presentation on some foundational facts. First of all, we all know the old saying, we've all heard it, I know that half of my advertising isn't working, I just don't know which half. Now, that's a genius statement, and it particularly applies to traditional marketing. And everybody thinks that Ogilvy or one of the big advertising firms coined that, but the reality is that it was Lord Leverhulme of the Lever Brothers, Unilever. So, but he knew, Unilever or Lever Brothers knew that when they were throwing money out at advertising, it was almost impossible to determine what the ROI is. How do you determine what the return on investment is with traditional advertising? It's almost impossible to track. And the only thing that we would do before social media is that if our traditional advertising wasn't working, we would keep doing it and we just simply throw more money at it. And we all know that's not the proper answer. And then about 2004, social media popped its head up out of the hole. And by 2008, it really had made a significant impact on the way we advertise, the way we communicate with our customers, the way we get our products, services, and corporate messages out and aware. So what happened was, I was working with the CEO of a company, and he said to me, he says, I've been doing traditional marketing my whole career. So he says, I get traditional. What I don't get is social media. Can you teach me? So I took my 600-page book and I slammed it down on the desk, and I said, yeah, read this book and you'll know everything you need to know about social media. It's in there. Well, he said, I'm not going to read the book. So I said, well, I can't help you because I can't teach you everything in a 600-page book just by talking to you. So he says, well, give it a shot. So we were talking, and in a couple of minutes, we went nowhere. I mean, he glazed over and kind of lost the whole idea. So what he said is, can you show me an image of what social media looks like? And I said, no. Everybody's been trying to develop an image of social media, but no one has been successful. I mean, you've seen the peacock wheels with the multicolored tools around it, but to me that's always nonsense. There's no relationships. It's just a bunch of random social media tools stuck on a multicolored wheel. So in analyzing what comes next and how traditional is going to interact with social media, I came up with this basic list. And this is the top 20 things that we all do in traditional media, traditional marketing. We've been around and we've grown up around it: print ads, trade shows, brochures, direct mail, telephone. And you can go through this list as I'm speaking, and you're familiar with every one of them. You know how it works. And the one thing is that almost every single one of these has a significant cost associated with it, especially television, radio, because if you have to make a media buy, you not only have to create the commercial, but you actually have to pay to advertise it. And that was one of the things that really fueled social media taking off the way it did. Now, if you look on the right, the one thing that I want to say is that everything that we do in marketing, whatever time we spend, whatever money we spend, has to lead to revenue. If you can't directly attribute it to generating revenue, then stop doing it, because you're wasting your company's resources and you're wasting your time. Marketing is about converting your effort into revenue, period. Now, there was another assumption that I made when coming up with this new concept. And being a futurist really isn't that hard. You look at where we were, you look at where we are, and you draw a straight line, and you could pretty well estimate that's where we're going to be. Now, if you're a fan of Mad Men, and that the season just started a couple of weeks ago, and I like Mad Men, I think it's awesome. It's on AMC, and the one thing that they had in that show back in 1964 when it took place was a vice president of television advertising. Now, you can go into any Fortune 500 company, and odds are in none of those companies you will find a vice president of television advertising, because it's ridiculous. It's just part of marketing. Well, when I go into Fortune 500 companies, the first thing they do is introduce me to their vice president of social media. And the first thing that I say to him is, before I leave today, would you please introduce me to your vice president of billboards? And they look at me like I lost my mind. And they come back and they say, well, we don't have a vice president of billboards. I said, yeah, I know. And in a couple of years, you won't have a vice president of social media. And what turns out that there is a trend in the United States in 2012 that all of these high-priced, high-paid social media experts that came into these companies as vice presidents of social media marketing, a lot of them are getting laid off because they're not identifying ROI with social media. And I'll explain why. In a couple of years, social media should meld and go back into marketing. It shouldn't be a standalone department. There's a difference that social media provides two-way communication and there's no large media buys, but it's still marketing. It's still communicating with your customers and your prospects. So just like we don't have a vice president of billboards, a couple of years from now, we will not have a vice president of social media. A matter of fact, we'll look back on it like these examples that I gave you and laugh at it. The smart companies are the ones that are going to recognize this early on and put those departments back together, because we can't eliminate traditional marketing. There still has some value, and I'm going to show you how to identify it. Now, one of the things in this assumption is that when I was looking at patterns, I went back and realized that communication, every technology that humans use for communication, almost immediately turns into a marketing tool. 6,000 years ago, we cupped our hands and we stood on a rock out in the desert and we said, buy our goats. And we told people the features and the benefits of our goats, and people would buy our goats. And when they stopped buying our goats, we would change up the message a little bit, get back on the rock, cup our hands, and the following morning shout out a different message. And nothing really has changed over the last 6,000 years except for the technology. When Gutenberg invented the printing press and movable type, he did it to reproduce the Bible, because every single Bible, and you know how big the King James Version of the Bible is, had to be hand written and hand illustrated. So they were extremely expensive and only the very rich can afford them. Once he did this, he democratized the Bible. He then created a Bible that was inexpensive enough that anybody can own it, which then led to people illiteracy disappearing. So even though I never had any proof, I guarantee the second thing that Gutenberg printed was a marketing piece on why you should buy his Bible. So I know that the second thing that he printed on his printing press was a marketing piece. So understand that every technology that we use to communicate, whether it's telephone, television, radio, or anything, the second thing that we do with it is we use that for marketing. Okay, so there's kind of the premise. So what I did was I wanted to create some kind of a visual image of what social media was, but I knew that if I started with traditional, that I would get this CEO's attention because he's been doing traditional his entire life. And if you can understand the traditional image, that I could swap it out for the social media image, and it would be an easier transition. So the first thing I did is I created that image that you're looking at in front of you right now, which I wasn't impressed with. I thought, wow, I did the same thing that everybody else did with their lousy images. I started with the starburst. That's that little pointy circle in the center. And I use a starburst because that's what we use in sales. New and improved, 20% off. You've seen starbursts. And I took each of the top 20 things in traditional and I put them around the wheel, and I was really unimpressed. And I looked at this image for a second and I was like, okay, what can I find in this image? Well, the first thing that popped out, which really surprised me, this is what we do in traditional marketing. This is everything in one image. I'm able to look at one picture and see everything, that all of my options that I have available to me in traditional marketing, all in one image. Now think about how we do traditional marketing or any kind of marketing. We always do it sequentially. The week that you're launching a new website, you're not going to do a big trade show in Atlanta. The week that you're coming out with a radio campaign, you're not simultaneously launching a television campaign at the same time. It's just too much for our heads to wrap around, and it becomes too complicated. So we do it sequentially. First we'll do this, then we'll do this. And usually what we do is what we did last year, but we think that this year we're going to do it better and we're going to throw more money at it and it's going to be more effective, which is never the case. So the first thing that I've got out of this image that was valuable to me for the first time in my personal history, I was able to see everything all in one shot. And I was like, holy moly, man, look at this. Everything right there. That's it. I could do this. I could understand this. Now, one of the things that I try to do is to develop relationships. If I can find a relationship between one item and another item and figure out how I can put them together, that's called synergy. And usually the synergy, the sum total of the synergy is greater than the sum of its individual parts. So I'm looking at this and I was like, is there any relationship? So the first thing I did is I took what I felt was the worst ROI marketing piece that we have, which is business cards. What is the ROI on business cards? Well, it's ridiculous to even think that there is an ROI. It's a stationary necessity that we all have to have. So there is no ROI. But then I thought for a second, wait a minute, I understand social media probably better than anybody. I wrote the biggest book on earth on social media. And the most important thing about social media is personal relationships. So if personal relationships are important because relationships lead to trust, trust leads to revenue, well then business cards are more powerful than social media. It's a simple deduction, because if I have your business card, you and I have touched one another. Legally, of course, but we've physically touched one another. We shook hands. We spent time together. We looked into each other's eyes. And we have built a relationship much stronger than you can do in any kind of traditional and anything you can do in social media. So business cards all of a sudden came out at me as being really important in the big picture of ROI in marketing. So I was like, okay, let me pick something else that I think pretty well smells. Let's do brochures. We all do brochures. We hate brochures. They're not effective. They're expensive if you're going to print them. If you distribute them in PDF, they're okay. But do they lead to sales? I mean, honestly, probably not. But wait a minute now. And you can see brochures, and it's about the 1 o'clock position on this wheel. Now, what if we connected business cards and brochures? Let me toss this out. What if we took business cards and put a QR barcode on the back of that business card that when you point your smartphone at it, a video popped up and said, hey, I'm glad to see you again. You and I have met. You're holding my business card. Tell you what, because we have a relationship, why don't you call the number on the front of the card, and I'll spend a half an hour on the phone with you and answer every single social media question that you have ever had. So come on, give me a call. What if? Do you think that would have any influence on potential customers contacting you via your business card? Well, of course it would. Of course. Wow, could you get anything more powerful than that? So I'm thinking, wait a minute, by making relationships, by making connections, I've got something that I've never seen before. I'm already doing business cards. I'm already doing brochures. There's no additional expense. And by simply forcing these two together, or by making this association, I'm leveraging business cards to the point where I'm probably going to get a 10 or even 100 multiple of return on investment. People are going to call me. So then I thought, okay, wait, that's a freak coincidence. What if I took coupons? We all know what coupons are. 20% off, 5% off, whatever it is. And it's got a UPC, Uniform Product Code, and it's got a picture of the product, and it's got an expiration date. Well, let's suppose you're Campbell's Soup, and you're in the store and you're holding a coupon for Campbell's vegetable soup, and you want to know if there's gluten in the soup. What do? I'll tell you what to do. You throw the coupon away and you go with the soup that you bought last time. But what if on that coupon there was a person's information, not just the home page for Campbell's, and not just a web page that nobody can navigate, or an 800 number that takes you into the switchboard. But what if Bob was on there and said, "Hi, my name is Bob, and if you have any questions about our product whatsoever, I want you to call me at extension XYZ." Do you think that that would have any effect on the number of coupons that are being redeemed? Of course it would. So by putting business card information on a coupon, now you have an exponential return on the effectiveness of that coupon. So now I'm seeing that by connecting these different products, wow, holy moly. And what if you put a coupon on the back of your business card? That when somebody actually took a photo of a QR barcode, that it simply opened up a PDF or a JPEG that had the coupon, the uniform product code right there, so that you can get a discount. So what I found is that I could take business cards and connect it with every single thing else on this wheel, and every time I make that connection from business cards to something else, I am identifying opportunity that I never would have ever seen before. Now, isn't that amazing? And I can go around this wheel and make connections from each to everything else on the wheel and discover these new opportunities. And then the really exciting part is that I can reverse those connections and actually double the amount of opportunities that I can find. So not only am I exponentially increasing the effectiveness of my marketing, but I'm doing it at no additional cost whatsoever, because I'm already doing these things anyway. But by using this fusion concept and fusing together multiple forms of marketing, you get that exponential increase without any additional expense. At this point, I was doing the end zone dance in my office, because I thought, OMG, I have never seen anything like this in my career. And I couldn't wait to actually develop the digital or the social media marketing wheel. The Social Media Bible has 20 major categories, 20 chapters, and as you see here, and these are the 20 major categories that I identified for all the different types of social media. So the first thing that I said is, wow, let me pick two things that are completely unrelated and see if I can find the same advantages, the same opportunities. So I picked virtual worlds, and if you're not familiar with virtual worlds, the largest one is called Second Life. And it's like being in a game, but it's not a game, and you don't get extra points for brain splatter, because the avatars, or the cartoon critters, every one of them is really a real live human being from someplace on Earth. And you get to meet people, and if you look at the picture in the lower right hand corner, that's me, okay, 25 pounds and 25 years ago. But that's my avatar, and that's the shirt that I'm wearing right now, and I've just decided not to wear that tie today. But in the back, I have a store that sells three-dimensional internet advertising and my educational products. I do these types of PowerPoint presentations for universities all over the world on a big screen TV in there, and sometimes I just go in there to hang out, and others do as well. So it's a really powerful platform, and if you're not familiar with Second Life, it's free, so go check it out. Okay, so now let's attach that to web pages. We all know what web pages are: blog pages, web pages, HTML, WordPress, whatever. Same old. We all got one, but they're not very effective. People don't buy as a result of your web page. It's a necessity again. So I thought, what if I connected virtual worlds and web pages? There's no connection. One is a thin client, one's a standard web page. But what happened was, when I went and looked at every single of my web pages, and I have about 14 different web properties, there was no mention on any of those web properties that I participate or have a presence, a property in Second Life. And I don't know why I never thought of the two. Maybe because they're completely disassociated. But what I did is I went into Second Life, I grabbed my picture of my little avatar in my office, and I put them on every one of my websites. If you want to connect with Lon and Second Life, click here. And it takes you into my property on Second Life. here's what happened. Within 24 hours, I saw a 400% increase in traffic to my Second Life property. 400% increase. Now, was that worth the time to do a little screen capture and paste it on my websites? OMG again, yes. So then I thought, okay, what if you go into my store? Is there any mention that I'm a keynote speaker, I'm a presenter, I'm a consultant, I'm a trainer? And I looked all through my property and I didn't do it. I was completely anonymous to anybody who would walk through that property if you didn't previously know me. So what I did was I put a big framed poster in the store that said, mention Second Life with any purchase and get a free $50 DVD. I saw a 180% increase in the traffic in my e-commerce store within 24 hours. Now there's ROI for you. You want to know where the ROI is? That's where it is. It's by fusing multiple tools that we're currently using. I'm already participating in Second Life. The investment's made. I already have my web pages, but because I've never thought to associate the two of them together, never look at them in one big picture, I never saw these opportunities. So simply by connecting and reverse connecting, I found exponential returns at no additional cost. And isn't that what every marketing, every company, every salesperson on earth is looking for? Increasing the ROI, increasing the returns, and not incurring any additional expense. So I was like totally freaking out. I was so excited about this concept. I couldn't wait to take the top 20 traditional and the top 20 social and start making these connections. I figured if I can do as much as I've already seen with each of the individual wheels, can you imagine what you can do if you took everything in traditional and everything in digital and social and actually combining it into one wheel? Well, here it is. And yes, the opportunities are overwhelming. And specifically, they're overwhelming. If you start to make these connections, your brain will bleed. There is so much opportunity here, it's completely unmanageable. You can't comprehend the number of things and ways to leverage. You just can't comprehend them because it becomes too large of a number. So I knew that I had a little bit of a problem. Even though I maximized the opportunity, I still had a problem because look at the number. It's 8 with 47 zeros after it. I'm going to say that again. It's 8 with 47 zeros after it. That's the number of opportunities that are embedded in that image. Could you believe that? So I was like, OMG again, how cool is this? But then I realized somehow I've got to come up with some kind of a formula to actually pare down the number of opportunities. So the first thing that I looked at is something called the cost of customer acquisition. And there's almost no companies in the world that knows what their cost of customer acquisition is. And they certainly don't know what it is specific to each of their advertising campaigns. And if you look at here we are, the top 20 things that you can do again in traditional marketing. And every company is doing most of those. 2/3, maybe 3/4 of those. Where is the ROI? What exactly is your cost of customer acquisition? So what I force companies now to do, I ask them to do it through the book, and it's the only place in this whole process that requires effort, is to look at it. Now let's take direct mail. If you did a direct mail piece, I did a direct mail piece a couple of years ago, and I spent $15,000, and it went out to 10,000 highly qualified direct mail contacts, and as a result of that $15,000 campaign, I picked up 4 new customers at $10 a piece. Yeah, I'm pausing for effect. I made $40 off my $15,000 investment. So the ROI is I should have been fired as the CEO of that company. And what it taught me when I measured it, remember earlier in this presentation I said that half of my advertising isn't working? And I don't know which half. Well, another thing is that I can't manage what I don't measure. And too many companies don't measure what they're doing. So with a direct mail piece, there's a lot of expenses. You have images, you have photographs, you have copywriters, you have layout people, designers, logo creators. Then you have to bring it over to the printer, and then the printer sends it back on that funny looking Mylar, and you mark it up, and then you reprint it, and then you have heavy paper. It's probably 100 pound. It's probably glossy. It's definitely 4-color. It's probably two-sided, or maybe even multiple pages. So you got saddle stitching, or you got stapling, and then you got to fold it. It's going to be bifolded, tri-folded, and then it's got to be stuffed in the envelopes, and then you got the labels, and you got the envelopes and the postage. You got to have somebody to do it. So the expenses just continually add up. And if you add up all of the expenses for every one of these categories that you participated in last year, total up each of those columns, count the number of new customers that you got last year, proportion those to each of these campaigns, and then simply divide the number of customers by the cost for that campaign, and you will find one of two numbers. OMG, I'm such an idiot, I will never do that again. Or, OMG, we got a great return on that. We're going to do that twice next year. So the number's going to fall into one of two categories, and that's either really good numbers or great ROI or really bad numbers. But now think about it. If you find campaigns that you can prove are ineffective, you can now take those human resources, those financial resources, and actually move them over to things that you know that work. So for example, could you imagine what I was able to accomplish by taking the $15,000 from the ineffective direct mail piece and putting it into social media, where I had no media buys whatsoever? It was just implementation. It went insane. And that's the importance of this process and determining the cost of customer acquisition. Now, on the social media side, one of the things that I learned is that of the hundreds and hundreds of tools, really the three that are most important is blogging, microblogging, and social networks. That's a whole nother presentation. If you don't know why those are important, blogging creates Google juice, it creates link love, sets you up as a perceived industry leader. Microblogging, it's not about the size of your network, but it's your network, because if it's good content, it'll be retweeted. And of course, social networks. If you're participating in the 1 billion member Facebook, or the 200 million member MySpace, or the 200 million member LinkedIn, you have access to a lot of potential customers. So my advice is just start with these three most important things, which I call the trinity of social media. Just start with those three and put those on this wheel with what you found to be the most effective traditional marketing that you have done in the past. Now, you can also add in things like video sharing, webinars, very effective way to get to customers. Very, very effective. So what you end up with is a customized wheel of tools that you have proven to be absolutely effective for your company, your products, your services, with your demographics. And if there are two companies in the room, each company will have a completely different wheel based on their own personal analysis, their own successes with cost of customer acquisition, and what they would like to see in their next marketing plan. But now we've got something that's a little bit more manageable. We can make all of these connections, interconnections. We can leverage one against the other. And here's what's awesome. These set of tools are specifically designed for your company, so you are going to absolutely maximize the return on investment or the effectiveness of each of these. And remember, you're doing all of this at no additional cost whatsoever. Now, this fusion marketing has three major parts. The second part is something called fractal fusion. Now, if you look at this, this is called a fractal image. So if I zoom in on any one of those little teeny circles, and I zoom in, and I blow the image up, I'll end up with this exact image again. And if I take any of the other circles and I zoom in far enough, I'll end up with this image again. And it works in reverse. It's a mathematical equation. It was invented by Mandelbrot in the IBM Thomas Research Center back in about 1964. It's just a simple equation that computers use, and it happens to be the equation that every simulator uses to create trees and skies and clouds and water. The whole fractal thing is really absolutely amazing. But what it means is that no matter how far down you drill into an image, you continually get valuable images, valuable information. So what I'm suggesting is, and by the way, this wheel that you see in front of you, when you buy the book, you get this for free. This actually comes with the Fusion Marketing Bible. You can download it and assemble it and work with your team. So it's totally free. Now, suppose we took just one of those tools. Now remember, Facebook is not a strategy. LinkedIn is not a strategy. Twitter is not a strategy. Those are tools. And that's why most people are losing their money, because they're looking at each of these as strategies, but they're tools. That's a big distinction that's important. Now, what if we took just one of the tools from the previous wheel, put it in the center of the wheel, and zoomed in on that tool? The first question that you're going to ask is, what are the top 15 social networks? Well, we all know about Facebook. Nobody thinks that MySpace is useful, even though they have 200 million active members and they're putting a lot of money into revamping it. And what about eCademy? Have you ever even heard of it? Friendster is still out there. What about Orkut? Are you on Orkut? It's outside of the United States. It's almost as big as Facebook, and it was bigger than Facebook outside of the United States and Europe for more than half of Facebook's life. So if you're not participating on the top 15, well, maybe you're not taking social networks serious. If you have identified that as a tool that's important to your company, then you need to really look at social networks, not as a big picture tool, but as individual tools. So with this image, by zooming in, will tell you is, you need to be on Facebook, you need to be on eCademy, Ning, Plaxo, BranchOut, because those are the largest networks on earth. So it forces you to take a closer look at a tool that you have previously already identified as being important to your company. Now, the next question is, are you fusing those networks? On Twitter, are you tweeting out to ask people to like you on Facebook? On Facebook, do you have your LinkedIn profile link so people can go over and view your profile? On LinkedIn, do you have your Twitter handle so people can follow you? You see where I'm going with this? You get the links and the backlinks where you're leveraging each of these tools one against the other, and it doesn't cost you anything because you're already doing it. This process, this fusion process, makes you look at things in a completely different light. Now, what if you zoomed in one more time? What if you took the one tool called Facebook and then Googled the top 10 things that you can do with Facebook? Have you ever done it? Do you know what they are? If you think Facebook is important, then how come you're not focusing on Facebook and really utilizing that tool to its fullest? So if you Google it, it will put these types of thoughts, processes, and tools and implementations on the screen, and then you can look at these and immediately identify what you're doing, what you're not doing well enough, and what you've never even thought of doing. If Facebook is identified as one of the successful tools that you're going to use as part of your social network tool set, then you probably ought to know how to use it. So do you see how cool this is? You can take any tool, put it in the middle, zoom in on it, look at all the other tools associated with it. You can take each one of those tools and zoom in. I mean, it just gets crazy. And you could do the same thing with traditional marketing. Here's the top 10 things that you can do with customer service. You're probably not aware of it. If customer service is important to your marketing strategy, then you should be aware of what the best practices are of best in class. Now, what if, I know you got to just hang in there with me. Now, what if you actually fused those two separate wheels? What if you took Facebook and customer service and then asked the question, how can I use Facebook to improve customer service? How can I use customer service to improve my Facebook likes? And then start making those interconnections. Look at the level and amount of opportunities. There is more opportunities than you can physically actually implement, and every one of them is perfectly customized and perfectly sound, just by using this tool. Now, here's the last thing, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A, but this is very, very powerful. When I went to write the book, I understand that strategy is tactics, tools, and strategies are extremely important. So many people write a book and they tell you what the tool is and how the tool works, but they don't tell you how to use it or why you should use it. What's the psychology behind the technology? How do you implement it? How do you implement it successfully? That tactics, tools, and strategy, that definition is so important to me. It's actually the subtitle of my book. If you look at the lower right hand corner, It says social media, Bible tactics, tools, and strategies for business success. So I wanted to have a chapter in the Fusion Marketing Bible on strategy. So I started writing the chapter, and I was like, okay, well, the strategy, you got to you look at your goal, you have to have tactic, but then if you take and I thought I had a stroke. I mean, I was getting ready to hit 911 on my phone, and I realized that even though I practice it and write about it all the time, defining it was almost impossible. So I called a friend of mine who has a PhD in marketing, a marketing PhD, and has been practicing for 35 years, written several books on marketing, textbooks for universities. He teaches at 6 universities. And I said, can you define strategy, goals? He goes, yeah. He says, that's easy. His strategy is, if you start with you got goals and then your objectives. Well, your tactics are actually, and I'm ready to dial 911 on him. So I realized that even though everybody talks about it, nobody really has defined it. And I couldn't find any clear definition on the internet or in any textbook from any of the universities. So I took on the challenge of defining it in this format. And I think you're going to like it. It's really been successful in the business world. Here it is. First of all, strategy is not a thing. Don't try to define it. Don't try to draw a picture of it. It's the sum total of everything else. And that's the first assumption you have to make, because if you don't, that's where we make a mistake. The strategy is the sum total of everything else, and here's how it works. The first thing that you have to define is your objectives. Objectives and goals are exactly the same, so throw the word goal away. People use it interchangeably, and it's not just get rid of it. Objectives. What I want you to do for your company is create 3 to 5 solid objectives. And what that means is, what do you want your marketing, all the stuff that we've talked about up until now, to actually do for your company? Yeah, we want it to generate revenue. That's a no-brainer. That's not an objective. That's a consequence or a result. So we're going to say, I'm going to use my tools this year to increase my email list, sign-up list, because I know that double opt-in emails can, in my case, can get up to a 35% conversion rate. That's what I get. And even the national average is between 15 and 17%. Or drive more attendance to my presentations, my live presentations at trade shows, at annual events. I want to perform more webinars. I want my marketing to help me develop more product awareness. Whatever is the most important objectives for your company. And create 3 to 5. Don't do any more than that, because it will become unmanageable, and you'll see that here in a second. Okay, so we're going to create 3 to 5 objectives, and you list them like you see over on the left. Now remember, tools. These are tools. They are not strategies. LinkedIn is not a strategy. Facebook's not a strategy. It's a tool. Once you really understand and believe that concept, now you're going to be successful in using those tools to achieve your objectives. So what that means is, how are we going to use business cards to increase our email list? Well, I'm going to put a QR barcode on the back of the business card that doesn't lead somebody to my home page, leads you right into the page where it asks for your email. Bang, put in your email, hit the button, and now you're on my list. That's going to increase my email list. How am I going to use brochures? On my brochure, I'm going to put a web link saying, here's how you get on our email list, and if you like our products, we have periodic sales and discounts. Look at all of these things. So what you're going to do is ask yourself the question, how do I use that particular tool? Twitter. How am I going to use Twitter to increase my email list? Well, if you like my 140 character tweets, you're going to love my emails because I don't have any character restrictions. Do you see? So by using every one of these tools to point back and to achieve those objectives, you now have 20 different solid custom tactics that are infallible and will be successful in driving or achieving that first objective. Is that amazing? I mean, look at this just for a second. You've identified a custom tool set that works perfectly for your company. You know that by the previous part of the presentation. You've created 3 to 5 sound objectives, and now you're going to utilize every one of those tools to achieve each of those objectives. And then what you do is you write down each of those tactics. Which, if you have 20 tools and 5 objectives, that's 20 times 5. You end up with 100 effective tactics that will achieve your specific objectives for your company and your marketing plan. Is that amazing? It's the sum total of those 100. Now, by the way, you're going to have to prioritize because you're still not even going to be able to implement all 100 of these tactics. But it's that summary of all of what you've just seen here in this simple image. That is your strategy. That's how you create a strategy. You start with your objectives, your custom tool set, and then you ask how does those tools achieve that objective. And when you've done that through the whole list, you now have a absolutely successful strategy. Now, the thing with fusion marketing, you can actually take those wheels that I showed you, the fractal fusion wheels, and I know this is going to make your brain totally get fried, but guess what? You can actually take those and interconnect them, snap them together, the actual paper wheels, in such a way that you can look at your marketing plan in 3 dimensions. And that's that image that you see on the right. Traditional, social, and I don't know, social networks. And you can interchange those wheels and look at them 3-dimensionally. Is that like totally insane or what? If you want more information on me, just go to lonsafko.com. It's just that simple. Here's my 2 books. Feel free. Go to Lon Safko, click on Buy the Books, and you get a discount.